Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Nelson City Council meeting, February 5th, 2018. Hard to believe it's 2018. Thank you for being here this evening, everyone. And before we begin this evening, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge a great loss to the city of Cranbrook. Captain Clayton Murrell was a firefighter with the city of Cranbrook. And you may have heard of the terrible accident that happened near Yak. It was he and his wife who were in the accident, and he lost his life as well as the truck driver in the other vehicle. And our thoughts and prayers go out to the city of Cranbrook and his family. So I'd just like to take a minute to all of council, with all of council, to acknowledge that loss. Thank you, everyone. So we'll bring this meeting to order. I'll begin with our Aboriginal acknowledgement. The City of Nelson acknowledges all Aboriginal peoples on whose traditional territories we stand. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. So Council, I am informed by staff we have a heavy agenda. It's my job to get us through this agenda as quickly and as efficiently and as thoroughly as possible, so I'll do my best, and I know you'll be working hard with me tonight. We have some interesting things on our agenda that we've been, some items that we've been waiting for a long time. So before we adopt the agenda, I'd like to just, Ms. Long told me that there is one item that we're removing.
Yes, Mayor Kozak, we'd like to remove item 9D, which is first three readings of an amendment to the sewer connection rates. We thought we had it fine-tuned, and unfortunately we didn't. We missed a couple of things, so we'll bring that back next time.
Thank you.
And also requesting that item 8A, the delegations, be moved in advance of the request. There's a presentation to Councillor Morrison.
Thank you. So Council, with those changes, could I have someone move the agenda as adopted or as amended? Thank you, Councillor Daly, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. I would like to have adoption of the minutes of our previous meetings. Regular Council January 8th, a special Council January 8th, public hearing January 8th, and special regular meeting January 22nd. Do I have a mover? Move. Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Seconder, please. Councillor Adams, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And now I would like to invite our fire department to come forward, please. It's nice to see so many of you here tonight. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, Mayor.
Pretty fancy.
Really tough time, yes.
Take a moment.
Yeah.
Take a moment. Just breathe. It's okay.
This is long overdue, guys. It's every year the BC PFFA hosts an event, and it's referred to as Fire Ops 101. It's hosted by Vancouver Fire. It's at their training center down in Vancouver. And it's an educational, hands-on experience for elected officials to attend, our elected officials to attend with one of us, to experience different aspects of our job. Anywhere from advancing hose lines to using the Jaws of Life, the auto extrication equipment, to as a team putting out a vehicle fire, going inside a building and searching and trying to put out a fire. So it was my honor this year to go down there with Janice Morrison, who attended with me. Yeah, Janice. It was a great experience. First time I had been to that. A very well laid out, informative day with elected officials and departments from across BC. So at this time, I would like to, on behalf of the BC PFFA and the Nelson Professional Firefighters Association, and of course the City of Nelson and Chief Charles for allowing us to use our equipment to take with us. I'd like to invite Janice up here for a presentation of the helmet as a keepsake for her.
Whoa.
Thank you very much, Bob.
You have to put it on.
You can wear it at work.
I can wear it at work. I sometimes feel like I need a safety helmet at work. Undo that, yeah, that's
Oh, there you go.
Oh, it's perfect.
Needs to repeat that. So, I'd like to ask the other members to come up and we'll take you through.
Yeah, I want a group photo.
I am so jealous of your helmet.
You can take it next.
You got to work hard for it. From what I can understand, this is not an easy thing to get this helmet.
No, it's.
It's a big workout.
Yeah.
Counselor,
Dennis, they want another
stand
picture.
with the rest of the.
I want to hold it. I just want to hold it because I want to hold it with all my. Oh, yeah. I have this on my Facebook page. I don't put anything on my Facebook page. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good work, Counselor. Good work.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for coming tonight.
That's just another helmet shield.
Perfect. I'm just so honored. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Perfect.
So now you know who to call when you don't call 911, you call Janice Morrison.
I just want to say it was a very good experience, and being able to do it with Bob was fantastic. I was going to the gym for the whole month before this, and Bob's great in the gym. Just keep working, you're doing great. And he was so enthusiastic and so helpful. And I know that in our pads we have some pictures. I don't think Francis was able to show them tonight.
I'm sorry, I can't. I wasn't
Yeah.
prepared for that.
So anyways, the rest of council can see the lovely pictures that Bob had taken while we were doing the work. And let me tell you, it's hard work. And I joked with all the volunteers and people that were there that, you know, I've taken this off my bucket list of careers I wanted. The other thing is I'm just about to age out of being able to be a fireman, so the city of Nelson is lucky.
And Counselor, remind us, how much does the gear weigh that you had to wear?
About 50 pounds.
Yeah, with your SCBA on, you're about 50 pounds heavier.
What's that? That's the breathing thing?
Yes, yeah, so it's a self-contained breathing apparatus.
Yeah, you'll see like I say, they're on your pad. You'll see the pictures. It's a lot of gear. That's just that. I mean, and then the uniform weighs like 50 pounds.
And then the fire hose, I don't know.
And I think
Yeah.
Councilor Morrison too, that sometimes the firefighters pull tricks on you when you're in the
Oh
training.
yes. I was going through the, what was it? The room where you have to be like as if the roof had caved in, and so you had lots of wires and through the box, and I felt like I was doing really well because I watched somebody else do it, and I got down on the ground. I had my oxygen tank on, and they tell you about getting in the corner and you have to shimmy through, and I'm thinking to myself, I think I've got the swim pretty good. And all of a sudden I can't move. And then I got the coach saying, no, just think about it. Don't try to sit up. You're going to get tangled in the wires. And they put a leash on me. And so they were holding on to me so I couldn't get through until I could show that I would stay calm, not sit up, not get caught in the wires, back up, and then start again. And then they let me out of the box.
Absolutely fantastic.
So,
She's on her back, on air, on her back, crawling in a corner, and that's how you swim out of those, you push the wires above you, and she did fantastic.
That's swimming helps.
that swimming helps. Exactly.
Well, when I went into the burning building, I thought the other three people were behind me, and they weren't. I was heading in with the hose by myself, so they had to grab me by the collar and pull me back out.
Well, see, if you would have had Counselor Daly with you, he would have shown you the ropes. How many years were you a firefighter?
30 years in Toronto.
30 years. Yeah, for City of Toronto.
Yep.
Yeah,
I highly
we're
recommend it.
We're surrounded. See, I suddenly the room feels very safe. It's very good.
Yeah.
Thanks,
So,
everybody.
Thank
And
you very much.
yeah,
Thank you.
it's really excellent. Thank you. All right, so let's begin with our first item. It's a request for a development variance permit for 614 5th Street, and this is to put a 2.5 meter setback from the front property line. And the house was built in 1901. This will allow the family to They're asking for this change so that they can put an addition, a second story on, and have a little more room in their home. So a house that was built in 1901, that's really something. So there's a resolution from our department, our Development Services Department, that the application for a development variance permit to vary the requirements of zoning bylaw 3199/2013 to allow for the construction of a detached secondary dwelling unit on the subject property be approved for Lot 7, Block 29, District Lot 58A, Kootenai District Plan 266A, 614 5th Street, as follows. To vary the minimum front lot line setback from 4.5 meters to 2.5 meters as per attached plans. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Adams, and seconded by Councillor Sherbo. And do we have any discussion?
Can we just have one point of clarification?
Sure.
Alex, would
Yeah,
like to-
we, there is a mistake in the writing there. It got flagged by detached secondary dwelling unit. It is not a detached secondary dwelling unit, but rather a second story addition.
Story, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for
So
that.
one amendment in wording there.
So we will, with the motion as amended, with that correction.
Yep.
And that's what we're discussing. Any discussion about that? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We have another request for a development variance permit, and this is at 520 Falls Street. And this is one where I think Mr. Toom will be walking us through this.
No.
Oh, Ms. Moreau, welcome.
Thank you.
Camera's not working.
Okay, so this is a development variance application for Share Housing Initiative.
Can you speak into the mic?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, then the people at the back can hear.
Do that.
That's great.
So this is a development variance application for Share Housing Initiative at 520 Falls Street. So that's located at the corner of Falls Street and Victoria Street. So the proposed development, the new building, is for a 5-story mixed-use residential commercial development. This is a rental development, 39 one-bedroom units with an average unit size of 400 square feet. They're proposing just over 1,300 square feet of ground floor commercial. The total
Sorry,
project.
Pam, can you let me know when you're wanting the slideshow to show up here? Are you ready for that now?
I am.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, I did not know they were not up there. So let's maybe go back.
Jimmy Larimer.
There we go. Okay, so the site, Falls Street, Victoria Street, everyone's familiar with that. 5-story building, rental units, 39 units, just over 1,300 square feet of ground floor commercial. Total project is valued at cost at about $10 million, with BC Housing as the primary funder. This is low-income housing opportunities for priority groups in the affordable housing strategy. So the applicant is proposing to subdivide the parcel into 2. The proposed east lot will have the existing building on it, which has Kootenai Christian Fellowship, the SPCA, Share Housing Initiative, and Our Daily Bread. And then the proposed west lot is where the new building will sit. In terms of circulation on the site, the main access will be off Falls Street, and you'll enter down, I'm going to call it Falls Street Lane, just to distinguish it from Heritage Lane. So that's down the western side of the eastern side of the existing building. You go around the building to the back, across the back of the lot. For emergency vehicles, they will exit out onto Baker Street. For all other vehicles, they will turn right and head up and exit out Heritage Lane. And we will get back to that circulation at the end of this presentation. So in terms of the first variance, it's for a reduction from 20 meters to 6 meters for the road right-of-way. So any roads in the downtown, the C1 zone, require a 20-meter road right-of-way. Obviously, that's because we have lots of vehicles in the downtown. This is not a through lane, so therefore the applicant is proposing it to go from 20 meters to 6 meters. This application was referred to internal as well as external agencies, so Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, Public Works, Fire, and Nelson Hydro. So in terms of that road reduction, Fire was the only one who had any real concerns because they were worried about where they're going to turn their truck around. But once we kind of resolved that with that exit onto Baker Street, they are satisfied with this application. However, that does require us to use that city-owned parcel that's adjacent to Baker Street. So it's a 20-foot wide parcel right adjacent to Baker Street. I think it's right beside that dental office that's there right now. So right now it's being used for parking. You also use it to access that parking lot for Best Western. It will also require elimination of 2 parking stalls in front of the Savoy. So the second variance is for a parking reduction on parcel A. So that's the proposed east lot. So currently there's a covenant on this site that requires 80 stalls for the site, and that was because of the former bowling alley there. There are currently 34 stalls in the back, so there never was 80. Or maybe there was, but there isn't now. There's only 34 now. And when I take a look at the existing uses, we would require 44 stalls. When I talk to the applicant, they say they've actually attributed 25 of those stalls to the existing uses, and they've actually leased out 9 of the stalls. I've gone to the site numerous times, as have the transportation engineers, and those 25 sites have never been full that I have seen. So when that lease expires on those existing 9 stalls, I think they have sufficient parking to accommodate that 10 stall difference. I think we've got that. So just to kind of give you a sense of what this building looks like, if I'm at the west end of Heritage Lane and I'm looking back at the building towards Fall Street, so right in the center there at the point you've got 5 stories, but then when you look to the right, and that's adjacent to Highway 3A, you've actually only got 3 stories because there's parking underneath. And then when you walk back up Heritage Lane, you actually get to 4 stories. And that's where the commercial is, and so you enter the commercial at grade. So it's an interesting building. So it kind of goes from 4 to 5 to 3. So this is the elevation that faces Highway 3A. So you can clearly see that's the 3 stories. And then at the corner there, at the point on the left-hand side, you've got the 5. Sorry, and then from the inside, again, on the left-hand side, that's the part of the building that faces onto Highway 3A. There's your 3 stories. If you look to the right, that's the 4 stories adjacent to the lane. And then right at the point there, that's where you get to 5. In terms of the transportation study, Urban Systems did the transportation. They expect this new development to generate 22 new trips in the afternoon, peak hour, and 19 in the morning. They say that's a minimal amount of traffic, and they don't expect that will have any significant impact on the adjacent intersections or on the capacity of that 6-meter lane. So from their perspective, this meets all the requirements for site access, parking demand, and emergency vehicle access. So in terms of how you circulate through this site, so originally that 6-meter lane was supposed to be a 2-way, and up until just recently it was a 2-way, so that as you were circulating around the site, if you needed to get out, you could get out through Heritage Lane, or you could go back through that 6 meters. Just recently, the transportation engineers have come back with a revised engineering study and said, you know what, we really prefer that 6-meter to be a 1-way only. So now if you come in, go around the building and around the back side of the lot, now it's, emergency vehicles can exit Baker Street, and other vehicles can only exit up Heritage Lane. Sounds great, but 3 days of the week, trucks are there for a maximum of 20 minutes. So now you have some issues getting out. So then I went back to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure as well as to the transportation engineers and said, what if instead of just emergency vehicles, maybe this is just an emergency exit so that when that lane is blocked, all vehicles can exit out onto Baker Street. They were both fine with that. MOTI is might be a bit concerned in the future if they decide to upgrade that intersection. And they say, well, they might need to have further discussions on this exit right there. I don't think they're going to have any concerns because one of the things that the transportation engineers are recommending is that you put a right only as you enter out that Baker Street exit. And so now you're not going to impact that intersection any longer. So I think that will probably work fine. Again, that's something that I will make sure is resolved at the development permit stage. The applicant already also has another option of perhaps setting the building back a bit further off the lane and allowing parking there for trucks. So I think that's something that we'll have more of a discussion around as we get further into this process. So that's the last slide.
No, it's okay. Finish your presentation.
Nope, that's it. That's the last slide.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll go with Councillor Purcell first.
Can you remind me where the trucks were again? Or
So do you see the Savoy building? Okay, so they park right in the lane, right adjacent there, because that's where their entrance is for their loading dock.
right, okay, in Heritage.
In Heritage Lane,
Heritage Lane there.
yes.
And I have a few questions.
Can we get this on the,
Yeah, so let's get the recommendation on the floor, and are we doing these separately? Together.
No, together.
All right, so the recommendation is this, that the application for,
Unless- I'm sorry. Would it make sense, is it possible to do one without the other on the recommendations that are there?
I would prefer them to go together.
Together, okay.
all right.
Okay.
That the application for a development variance permit to vary the requirements of the subdivision and development servicing bylaw number 3170-2011 and the off-street parking and landscape bylaw 3274-2013 to allow for a two-lot subdivision of Lot 1, Plan EPP 10960, District Lot 95, Kootenai Land District, 520 Falls Street, be approved as follows. 1. Subdivision and Development Bylaw 3170, 2011, Section 4.2, to allow for the primary access to the proposed new development be reduced in width from 20 meters to 6 meters. And second, off-street parking and landscape bylaw 3274, 2013, Section 6.1, 2A, to allow for a reduced parking rate from 80 stalls to 34 stalls for the existing commercial building on the site. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Sherbo, seconded by Councillor Adams. Go ahead, Councillor Purcell, and I'll have you next, Councillor Sherbo.
What's the width of an average driveway? You're saying that 20 meters is a street and they're wanting 6 meters, and I'm just curious.
So in terms of a parking stall, we require 2.75 meters.
And the travel lane is under 4, right?
Under 4. So this is wider than that.
Normal single travel lane, yes.
Right. Okay. And how does this? Have we heard from the Best Western or the Savoy? Like, how does this impact them?
So we've sent out notifications to everyone within 60 meters, so they have not.
And they haven't.
responded.
Okay. And then so because trucks might be in Heritage Lane, blocking that circulation, but then if that's the case, people can use the emergency exit, and everyone but Modi is okay with that potentially.
Yeah, Modi is okay with it too.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they're okay. They're just thinking in the future, but they don't realize that we're putting a right turn only lane here because they haven't seen the transportation study.
So they'll like that.
Yes.
Okay.
So I will, once I get to the development permit stage, I will send that off to them and we'll have that conversation.
I think this looks great.
You're good?
Yeah.
Good. All right, Councillor Sherbo.
yeah, so on the fire lane, you got that one way, correct? The fire lane going out past the building.
So it can't be a one way.
You got it marked one way.
Yeah, so it's a little strange, but that's where people enter on into the parking lot.
Because what I want to discuss is Heritage Lane.
Heritage Lane?
Heritage Lane.
Yeah.
Going out there is very difficult, going towards whatever that street is up there,
Fall Street.
Wall Street. That's very difficult to go out there. I was thinking that should be one way going in. Rather than going out.
So
Like
that's
going out by the Savoy
yeah.
and trying to turn on that street is very difficult with my pickup truck.
Even if it's one way?
Well, no, I'm saying it should be one way going down towards the fire lane emergency access rather than going up.
So as you come out Heritage Lane, they're suggesting that that's a left turn only. So you can't turn right to go up to that intersection at Victoria. You can't go up to go to Victoria Street. So it's a left turn only out of Heritage Lane.
More difficult. Because you're crossing the lane of traffic to get, it'd be easier to turn right.
I think their point is you have to come out, then you have to zip around, and then you have to go like this. And their point is as you're going around there, you're taking up a lot of the road.
I think it'd
And
be
that's
better
where
one way going in.
That's where the parking stalls get eliminated, right?
They do. Yeah.
So whether you're going one way in that way or one way out there, you still have to go through that.
I know, but
Crazy
it's
little-
easier going in downhill
And I think that will,
rather than
I
trying to
think
go.
that detail will get fixed or sorted out. I think for this purpose, you have to recognize to service that lot and service the existing lot,
And as
That's
well,
the only access in and out is.
so the other thing is, as you're going out, if you're going up towards Fall Street, it's a blind corner. So what if somebody's coming in as you're going out? And there's not enough width on Heritage, however you say that, lane for two vehicles.
No, there isn't.
And that's
There's
why you're
not.
having that one-way circuit. It's not an easy lot. That's,
It is not an easy lot.
Well, it would be easier to go in.
again, I
One
don't
way.
think council has to get worried at that level of detail.
That's why we
I
have
do.
transportation engineers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Other Councillor, yes, Councillor Daly.
So I assume that the fire department got an aerial truck down and through, around that.
They're good.
The question I have is the fire lane emergency access, you mentioned a lot that is owned by the city that we would then become part of that emergency access.
We would allow them to use that as an emergency access.
And is that something, so basically we're contributing that lot, I mean, to the project in some way?
Well, right now, it's been used as access to that parking lot. So I think it was always intended to be, for access. Certainly it would, I assume in terms of them applying for this grant, I'm sure they're applying for, and certainly they can identify, the city's allowing that. It's not exclusive for these folks'
Right.
use.
And so that is just a city lot beside the dental building?
So it is
That's-
up-
Do you know the size of that?
Yeah, it's 20 feet wide and it's pretty much the length there.
Oh, it's the full length of that red?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, it
okay.
does. It goes that full length.
Okay.
And it's a lot, not.
It's a lot, not a road right away. Yeah,
It is a lot.
it is a lot.
It's that long lot.
Yeah.
And so the neighbor, the dental must own behind back there,
Correct.
their whole way. Okay, got it.
And again, it's access to that, their parking at the back as well, right?
Right, but there's,
Currently.
okay. And there aren't any stipulations on any of that right now?
No,
No, they're just relying on
Okay.
council's goodwill that you're allowing access across your private lot.
Okay. Do we expect any more variances with this project?
no, we do not.
Okay.
They
Said
promised.
with very, very surely. I heard that.
Okay, and then I'm not seeing any parking variances for the building itself, so the parking's included in that
Correct.
design. Okay, I mean, okay.
Other questions? Other discussion? Could we have a wee bit of discussion on why it seems like a very dramatic decrease in parking? So can you just expand upon that a bit and about the conversations and the rationale behind that and what that's going to mean?
Right, so the 80 stalls that were required were because of the bowling alley.
Right.
So that's what it was. So if we were looking at that today, it would need 44 stalls. They are proposing 34, so a decrease of 10. They lease out 9, which they're getting back, so they've got 9 right there. Plus, the stalls that the existing uses are using, they're not using all the 25. So that's where it is.
So that's great that Mr. Toom is here. He's our parking expert in town here, so it's great to hear that there might be a few more spaces opened up.
Nice.
That would be really good. Any other discussion, council? Are you ready for the question?
Question.
All in favor?
Well, just,
Oh.
I've just thought again, are we gonna have to do some infrastructure, put a hydrant down there or something?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay,
And that will be the cost of the development.
okay.
All right, are you ready for the question now? All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. And this project has been a long time coming, and I know that there are people who have been working on it for a long time, so congratulations and good luck, and we're looking forward to this. This is great. Adding to our housing stock, or especially our affordable housing stock, is something that's really important. Our next item is an agenda bylaw amendment for Railtown. So what, and I'm going to turn this over as well to Ms. Moreau for some discussion as well. The community might remember that we had some consultation on the area of Railtown moving into the future. And after community feedback and discussion, council did some rezoning and is looking at rezoning that area so that it will allow for mixed-use residential, commercial, and still retain some of the industrial nature of that neighborhood. And Ms. Burrow will walk us through some of those discussions.
Great, thank you. Further to Council's approval of the Railtown Sustainable Neighborhood Action Plan, we're bringing forward amendments to the OCP, the zoning bylaw, the parking bylaw, and the subdivision bylaws. These were identified as some of the first actions to complete in the implementation table for the Railtown SNAP. Key to these changes include allowing for a greater diversity of uses, as well as providing for the extension of Baker Street and downtown development into Railtown and connecting Baker Street to Government Road. Highlights of the bylaw changes include the provision of a new land use zone, C4, which is based on and very similar to the C1 downtown zone, maintaining the current height of 20 meters in Railtown as opposed to the C1 height, which is 16 meters, adding a bunch of new uses such as distillery, multi-unit residential, art gallery and museum, entertainment facility, professional offices, and tourist accommodation. As well, it includes for the extension of the downtown parking area into Railtown and parking reductions for mixed-use buildings, as well as for the provision of car share stalls. The proposed changes will allow us to start working on implementation of the vision of the Railtown Sustainable Neighborhood Action Plan. So Dave Wan is here, and he's done a lot of work on this project, so if you have any questions at all, he'd be more than happy to come up and answer those. Although he's hiding away in the corner over there.
Hi, Mr. Wan. Nice to see you again. We'll just wait for him to take his seat here, and then we can, I'll take some questions. All right, Councillor Sherbo.
So we're talking about a car share parking spot, correct?
Yes.
What about another charging station? Should we have another car charging station down there?
Well, we've installed the one at the CP Station House. As you know, Fortis is contemplating adding some fast charging stations in our area. Whether, I don't know if we've really, I'm not sure if that's in zoning or any of these things we're doing. That's probably more when you get to the development permit stage. So we can certainly identify that and have that discussion with the proponent.
Councillor Purcell.
I have a few questions. One of them relates to the car share idea, which I love. I'm just wondering how that normally works. Does the proponent purchase the cars to go in those stalls, or do we just say, for you, car share, if you feel like buying more cars? Like, how does that tend to work?
Well, in the communities that have such bylaws in place, mostly they're within U.S. jurisdictions where I've done the research. They are specifically dealt with for car to go and another big name one I can't remember. But the idea is it's an arrangement between the developer and that organization. And so if the car share organization would like to have another car, they would be negotiating that as part of the agreement between them. Okay. So I don't think it's our place as the municipality to dictate how many cars they should have. That's up to the organization. If they feel they need more cars, they can negotiate that with the proponent in those situations. The issue that we're primarily looking at is encouraging car share and encouraging the thought of car share, and as a result, reducing the parking requirement where there are car shares. The concern, of course, is how far do you want to go? Somebody's saying, well, 20 car share stalls. Well, that's probably not realistic, but we want to allow for a maximum of 2 per development, and at this point, and see how the uptake is and whether it's too high, too low, right, and work from there.
And that doesn't matter how big the development is. It could be an 8-plex, it could be a 4-plex, it could be 20 units.
Yeah. So again, it's going to be reliant upon the car share organization and the developer working with the car share to determine the needs in that situation.
I also noticed that the land use excludes cannabis-related business, and was wondering about the rationale for that when we haven't completed our community consultation on that yet.
The cannabis-related business, from my understanding, and I'm not a full expert because I didn't deal with it, but it's my understanding that's relating to a dispensary, not with respect to the recreational cannabis that we're doing the research on right now. So it's my understanding that things are going to change significantly, and we may have to adjust within this proposed C4 zone the name that we come up with, if we come up with one at that time. We felt that it wasn't appropriate to jump into a cannabis-related business because I think we're at our max right now for 6 for the city. And so the idea was to take it out of the mix at this point and then relook at it once the city's determined where we're going on the recreational side.
Do we have other zones where they're...
So right now, as you know, council's passed no additional
dispensaries, yeah.
Well, cannabis retail outlets. So I think at this stage, the C4 zone is part of that, right? If you amend, once you finish that work, then you're going to have to go back and amend your bylaws, right? On all your zoning.
Right, so we'll be coming back with zoning bylaw regulations when we roll out the recreational cannabis.
I guess I just don't know why it's here if...
See, we don't allow it in the C1 zone now, right? Under your moratorium. It's not allowed there either. So it's not allowed here either. You're going to come back after we complete the cannabis consultation and decide where you are going to allow it. So right now it's not allowed anywhere.
Because we already have the 6 that we said that...
Well, you have to separate the dispensaries, which, again, medical...
Right, because
cannabis dispensaries are not legal now and won't be legal under the new federal provincial regulations. So those will ultimately disappear. And then you're going to zone for non-medical cannabis. And you'll look at all your zoning areas. Right now, we're just a little bit, this is ahead of that process.
Including it.
It's pretty mature to me. But moving on, I was looking at the changes in brewery terminology, changing it to craft brewery from microbrewery, and I'm just wondering how the regulation differs, the new one from the previous one, and if it impacts existing breweries like MBC.
Yeah, the research that was done was with respect to existing breweries in town, with the exception of Nelson Brewing Company. That's got an industrial designation. That's not technically a craft brewery based on the definitions that we have here. It's under an industrial zoning. But the other craft breweries, we looked at the size and the types that are in place, and we made sure that they all complied with this regulation that we have here, and so that anybody new would fit into the same rules that they are working under. And we wanted to include the definition of a distillery because a distillery wasn't identified, and we wanted to include it. We felt there was sufficient similarities between a distillery and a brewery that we wanted to tie the two together in a definition that encompassed both aspects. So that was the rationale for that. And in that case, we looked at definitions, places with best practice in BC, Penticton, Kelowna, I forget where else, another community, in coming up with the definition and marrying that with our existing definition of microbrewery and with the size and types of breweries that we have in town.
So, Dave, the practical aspect of that is we wouldn't, if you were larger than our current craft breweries, then you would have to come back for...
If significantly larger, the number that we have here, I forget the number, 270 square meters, I think is the size. The largest that we have is somewhat smaller than that, so I wanted to put in a bit of a buffer there to accommodate.
looking further down around conditions of use and storage of vehicles for sale shall be located indoors. Does this mean Ford has to put their cars inside, or are they grandfathered in? Or?
Nelson Ford would have a different zoning. The zoning that we're talking about there is a C4 zone and updating the C1 zone. The intent there is to really keep the area as a people place, not a car place. And car sales, if they are to occur, we didn't see that it was appropriate in these areas that we wanted to see as a people-oriented place to have big car lots for sale. And so certainly Nelson Ford is a different zone. I think it's M3, and it would be grandfathered, and it actually isn't part of these regulations that we're putting in place.
And then the maximum of 50% of the gross floor area of a building at street level may be used for off-street parking, but in the back, I understand, for
That's the same
aesthetics and
reason,
same
yep.
reason. Is that a common percentage? Is that kind of an industry standard, or?
That was just a number to try to ensure that the dominant use was something other than car parking. We wanted to ensure that car parking was not the predominant thing in this new area that we're creating, that it's primarily for people and cars are secondary. And so we wanted to hide them away somewhat, and if we talk about parking, it's part of the same rationale. We wanted to reduce the parking there to some extent in order to mirror the existing downtown regulations, and also instead of having a whole lot of pavement for parking, we have we're going to have roads where cars can park also. So,
But I mean, 50% seems like a lot. Like, why not 30 or 25?
it was a best guess, something to start with. Certainly, where I think the market's going to dictate a lot of it, because car parking pricing is not as high as retail space or residential space. And so developers are predominantly going to want to get the highest market rent that they can on the main floor of their properties, and they're going to limit the number of parking stalls. And that's sort of the perspective I had in reviewing it and in coming up with the numbers. We have to look at the market. Market is critical, but we also want to ensure the form of the new neighborhood there meets the Railtown SNAP to the highest level.
And I just have one more.
Sorry, just adding to that, I think part of the other balance is we're trying to encourage that residential above, which requires a certain level of parking. So
to be available,
Right. So if they just built commercial, you probably could manage it, maybe even less. But as soon as you put that residential above, which is a strong goal, you're going to need some level of parking.
And then just curious about the minimum lot area not being less than 278 meters. Is that?
Yeah, that's similar to the downtown. Well, it's the exact same regulation as the C1 zone as it currently is right now. And part of the discussion for Railtown is having live-work opportunities. And it's unlikely that somebody's going to be able to have a live-work opportunity there on a very large parcel. Perhaps in a multi-development, multi-individual or commercial / residential development, there may be. But there may be some people who are interested in having a bit of a welding shop below and a residence above. And if you look at the mapping in the area, you'll see a number of fairly small lots that currently exist. And we want those opportunities to develop there in such a way, whereas not everybody's going to want a bigger store or what have you. So we want it to be flexible and allow for some degree of opportunity if somebody was wanting to subdivide in that case.
And do you foresee people maybe wanting to go even smaller?
Possibly. One of the things in the report that was there is that this is a start. We don't have any concrete proposals on hand right now. So we don't know what the market or the developers or the property owners in the area are going to want to do into the future. We wanted to create an environment which gets them thinking and gets them looking at investing and bringing commerce to the area. And from that point, we may have to do adjustments, either variance or perhaps even some more zoning changes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Purcell. Councillor Sherbo.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about Nelson Ford and parking, but you covered that. So the industrial zone, I believe, is marked in red, and mixed use commercial industrial. It doesn't look, well, it's hard to tell from the map, but it doesn't look like Maglio's is totally covered or Cal Tire, but it's hard to tell from that
Okay,
map.
so if you look at the map and the proposal, the Maglio's property, well, the Maglio store property is the mixed commercial industrial.
Okay.
Cal Tire has, what we've tried to do is create an ambiance, if you will, of Baker Street and an extension of Baker Street, and that involves Cal Tire. Because it would be coming off any extension of Baker Street at that point, and we wanted future development to sort of fit into that new regime into the future. If you look at the actual zoning regulations, Cal Tire would be a permitted use in the C4 zone.
Okay.
The way it's developed right now would not be. The parking lot out in front, for example, would not be something we would be supporting. However, the actual Cal Tire as it is right now would be a permitted use within that zone. So it does comply, but not entirely to what the proposed zoning would be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Council? Go ahead, Councillor Daly.
Just one, so would they have to comply with the zoning or not at this point?
They're grandfathered in. If they were to do new development, if they wanted to, any new development would have to comply with the bylaw as it is.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate this is a start, and it's a big piece of work. And, the goal of streamlining the approval process to getting some of the big chunks in place, I appreciate that, to attract development. There's a comment from Nelson Fire around shipping containers.
Oh, yeah.
Is that something that would be allowed or not?
I didn't understand that. What is the objection and what are they talking about?
Well, the issue of shipping containers is that throughout the province and probably outside the province is that shipping containers are placed on property and people store stuff in it that are flammable or could cause major issues. And I concur significantly and have had conversations regarding this issue, and it's not new to the city. All development requires a development permit. So number one, shipping containers are probably not going to meet our design guidelines for the area. That's number one. Number two, any construction has to meet building code requirements. And so, for example, I believe there's a shipping container just on the other side of the tracks here. We've gone in and required them to meet, this was some years ago, meet building code requirements in order to make sure that things are safe. So any development that goes in has to be safe. It has to meet fire code, building code, and meet design guidelines for the area. And if a shipping container can do that, it's permitted.
Like shipping container housing, like there's some.
By all means.
Okay.
Could you just explain some rationale on the 20-meter height restriction? How did you come up with that, or?
I think that's a question for Pam.
So that's existing. So that's already there in Railtown.
Oh, okay.
So the intent was not to take it away.
I see, okay.
It,
And,
it was part of the Railtown planning process.
okay, to go to 20 meters.
It was already in place.
You're
That was
right.
already in
You're
place.
right.
So it actually came from you. Sorry, Dave. I'm gonna pass that one right off.
I can't remember that. I think that was part of the downtown waterfront plan process. I think that's
That's where it came from.
coming back to me. Okay.
Okay, and I see this has been to the City Advisory Planning Commission, which has residents in it as well, where this will now go to, or if we pass this, it goes to public hearing.
Correct.
So we're gonna hear back from more
Yes.
information before a final decision is
Yep.
made, so. Right, thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Purcell.
Well, I'm wondering, it says that, that a few people on the APC had some concerns, and I'm wondering if any of those are concerns we should be aware of.
Two concerns that I can recall. One was one of the members was concerned with respect to he didn't want to make a recommendation because he didn't have a development proposal in front of him. He felt he didn't have enough information and to say whether this is a good thing or not. A second individual, from my understanding, his issue was why are we developing in the city? There's too many people here already. That was part of the rationale there. And my response to that question is that property, all property, have development rights. And people, if they're privately held, those people have rights right now to develop. And this proposal is to try to ensure that we're identifying a kind of development that is appropriate for the area. It's not a question of whether we have no growth in the community. It's a matter of what is the best appropriate land uses and development standards that we want, and going from there, as opposed to what already exists.
And this is not about any one development. It's laying that groundwork for things to come in the future to make sure it develops in an orderly, desirable way.
Yeah.
Okay, Council, let's go with
Sorry.
Councillor Adams.
If I could just, I do sit in at the APC. It is the committee that we don't chair as the committee, as the council representatives, but I sit there and I just wanted to concur that Mr. Wan does have that information correct, is that one member was feeling that why was there a rush, but at the same time that concept of was explained about trying to take that higher look. I mean, if we could wait for development, and then we'd have development X in that corner, and they'd be coming to us for some zoning or variances, then we'd have the next one, and then the next one. And I think that we're trying to safeguard the concepts of the SNAP. I mean, there was a lot put into that. There was public meetings, people were able to participate. And so it's that, as Mr. Wan was saying, safeguarding the sort of overall vision. And so, so that you cover that. That's what I recall as well from and we did meet, we had 3 meetings of the APC in terms of trying to look at this, but we had some attendance problems. But at the very end, we did able to get through and pass the 4 recommendations that were in front of the APC. So there was very robust discussion, because even when we didn't have quorum, we were discussing the Railtown plan. So, and they'll all be, that committee will also be advised of when the public hearing is, so that they can also go and listen to the public meetings and presentations and eavesdrop on what everybody's saying at those events. And I'm sure that we'll be having this come back across the table again for the APC, so as developments come along.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Adams?
Thank you. Mr. Wan, I think you said that if that lot was vacant now and Cal Tire came to build, they'd have to build towards the front of the lot?
Not necessarily. They wouldn't be able to have a parking lot in front of
They
it.
wouldn't be able to have a parking lot?
Yeah.
Okay, so if they wanted to add another bay for changing tires, it would go where, at the back or the front? Or,
It would be likely at the back.
okay, so it's not a major concern.
I don't know. When it goes to public hearing, it might be. I don't. These at this point, we're introducing the draft to council, and we will be notifying all the property owners in the area as part of the process. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Further discussion, council? Councillor Purcell.
I'm curious also under operations when this was given out to city departments. It says, I'm also wondering when the off-street parking reductions would be applied to the on-street parking in relation to knowing the full extent of this development. I'm not sure I understand that.
Okay. So we referred these sets or these bylaws out to a number of agencies internally and externally. Mm-hmm. And operations responded. They had, their question was with respect to parking. Well, one of the key things that I haven't heard the question on right at this point was with respect to the opportunity to reduce the parking requirement where there's a new street or road being constructed. And so operations were a little concerned and worried that it might mean more work or effort for them in road maintenance. If there's a road put in as part of a development there and the city says off-street parking or part of the parking requirement for off-street can actually go on-street. The intent of that clause is to sort of mirror what Baker Street is right now, where any new development in Baker Street has a parking requirement, but everything is pretty well developed on Baker Street. And so the idea is that as businesses change or they put in residential change of use in properties, that sort of thing, that the street is the predominant parking area for commerce. Not necessarily for residential, but for commerce. And the idea would be the same thing in this part of the city, so that, again, we're trying to minimize as much pavement as we can and trying to ensure that we're creating a people place first and allowing for parking to be on the street where appropriate. And that would be determined at the development permit stage by the approving officer, looking at the needs of the city for street furniture, for bus facilities and all that sort of thing. And then if there's any extra parking available, opportunities available on the street, they could use those parking stalls as part of their on-site parking reduction.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for all of your work on this. It's very thoughtful and looks great.
Any other discussion, council? Go ahead, Councillor Wallington.
You alluded to it. With these types of developments, I'm seeing more and more that the public transit is planned in advance. And I'm wondering, have we given any thought to how public transit might work in this new development?
I think that at this point it's a bit premature until we get an actual development. Specifically, the thing that comes to mind based on the official community plan and the Railtown plan is with respect to a transportation connection between the existing Baker Street at the end through to Government Road. And that's predominantly one property owner. And when and if they come forward with a development proposal, that's when we'll be getting BC Transit involved in that process, along with operations and all the other agencies to review those long-term needs. If somebody's putting in a whole bunch of apartment buildings there, for example, that might be a totally different need than a number of stores or live work opportunities. So I think we have to look at what the proponent comes up with, and then feed that through the necessary process at that point.
Further questions? We have a few recommendations to move forward on then, so let's move to that. First one, that the official community plan amendment bylaw number 3391, 2018 be given first and second reading. Thank you, Councillor Daly, seconded by Councillor Adams. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Second, that zoning amendment bylaw number 3392, 2018 be given first and second reading.
Moved.
Pardon me. Did I just read that one?
Nope.
No, that's a
Same
different,
thing,
oh,
official
different one.
plan,
Thank you.
zoning.
Are you moving that, Councillor Morrison? Thank you. And second by Councillor Purcell. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Third, that the off-street parking and landscape amendment bylaw number 3393, 2018 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only.
Moved.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Daly. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That the subdivision and development servicing amendment bylaw number 33, that the off-street parking and landscape amendment bylaw number 3393, 2018 be read a third time by title only. Mover? Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That the subdivision and development servicing amendment bylaw number 3394, 2018 be introduced and read a first and a second time by title only. Councillor Sherbo, seconded by Councillor Warmington. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. I'm on number 6 now.
Yep.
That the subdivision and development servicing amendment bylaw number 3394, 2018 be read a third time by title only. Councillor Daly moves, Councillor Sherbo seconds. And any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And last, that council directs staff to schedule a public hearing for bylaws 3391 and 3392. Councillor Daly moves and Councillor Warmington seconds. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Council. And thanks, Mr. Wan and Ms. Moreau. Now we'll move on to, we have another, tonight is a night of big vision, big plans, and plans coming to fruition. This is, we have Ms. Moreau up on deck here again to discuss the applicant, Nelson Cares, the application by Nelson Cares for some affordable housing.
Absolutely. So this is a rezone application for Nelson Cares Lakeside Place redevelopment at 805 Nelson Avenue. So that's on the corner of Nelson Ave and Kokanee Ave. And so the site is in red, and the portion of the site that they're proposing to redevelop is in blue. So just to clarify that, they are keeping the existing building that's on the north edge of the property and replacing the rest of the development that's currently there, which is an old motel, the green buildings. So those are the ones that are being replaced. So in terms of elevations, if we'd start at the top left corner, you've got the north, which faces onto their existing three-story building, the one that's staying, and then you've got the west elevation, and so that's adjacent to a single-family house as well as a four-story residential tower further back. So moving over to the right, you've got the east elevation, and that's the one that faces Nelson Avenue. Down to the bottom right corner, you've got the west elevation, and so that, again, is facing onto the single-family home, and then there's a four-story residential development there as well. And then the south elevation, which faces Kokanee Ave. So this is a four-story mixed-use residential commercial building with 47 affordable rental apartments, studio, one-bedroom, and two-bedroom units. The focus is for seniors and people with disabilities. And this replaces the existing 20 units of housing in a former 1950s motel. Total construction costs for the projects are estimated at $11.3 million, and again, BC Housing is the primary funder. There are currently 105 eligible low-income individuals on the wait list in Nelson for these units. So So there's 36 one-bedroom units, 6 two-bedroom units, and so those are the units that are for the seniors, and then there's 5 studio units for people with disabilities. The units range in size from 334 to 775 square feet. There's 23 below market units and 24 at the low end of the market units. The ground floor also includes a senior services and a resource support center. So the current zone is MU5, and so the new zone will be CD7. It'll be the same as the MU5 with 3 exceptions: an increase in height from 3 to 4 stories, a decrease to the exterior side setback from 4.5 meters to 2.5 meters, and a decrease to the parking from 59 to 19 stalls. So the first variance to the MU5 zone is an increase in height from 3 stories to 4 stories. So it's easier to look at this from a land use perspective. So this site sits within the MU5 zone. And again, remember I said to the north, there's that 3-story Nelson Cares building already. To the northwest, there's a 4-story residential development. They're directly adjacent to Nelson Avenue, so Highway 3A. And then further to the east, you've got institutional, and to the south and to the east, you've got service commercial. So the biggest impact of this project will be to the residential, which is immediately to the west and to the south of this development. So in terms of trying to mitigate that contrast between the two types of uses, they are proposing to put the entrance to the underground parking garage on the western property edge, so to provide a buffer between the proposed new development and that single-family development to the west. They're also going to put a privacy hedge along there as well. And in terms of trying to make this building fit in with the community, I think they really try to give it a strong pedestrian scale and feel through the use of architectural definition, so that they've really defined each of the 4 stories. Mm-hmm. So it's not just this one big monolithic building. I think through the use of transparency and glazing, so there's lots of windows in the building. I think the warm color palette and the choice of materials, so the brick as well as the exterior landscaping, all helped integrate this building into the community. In terms of context, again, we talked about it. There's a 3-story immediately to the north, and to the northwest there's a 4-story. A little bit further to the south, you've got the Fairview Heritage, which is 3 stories, and further to the south, you've got the Valhalla Apartments, which are 4 stories. And then over to the east, along closer to the waterfront, you have both Auburn Bay and Silver Bay, which are 4 stories, as well as the Radio Ave row housing at 3 stories. So the shadow study, the biggest impact obviously will be December 21st at 10 in the morning. So this development will impact the yard of that single-family home directly to the west. It will also place that 4-story residential tower completely in shadow, as well as that 3-story Nelson Cares building that's on the existing site. So that's kind of the worst day and the worst time. The only other impact to adjacent buildings really is March 21st at 10 a.m. Again, that yard immediately to the west has shadow, as does a little bit of the yard where that 4-story residential complex is. I think the biggest impact overall is to that existing Nelson Cares building, which is that 3-story to the north. So the second variance to the MU5 zone is to the exterior side setback, and they are proposing to reduce that from 4.5 to 2.5 meters. Again, that's immediately adjacent to that closed road right-of-way and then adjacent to Nelson Avenue. So we don't see much of an impact on this. At a future date, they are also proposing to landscape that closed right-of-way, and MOTI has given their approval on that. The third variance to the MU5 zone, they're proposing to decrease parking from 59 to 19 stalls. So again, the entrance to that underground parking garage is on the west side of the property. You've got 19 stalls underground, which represents 0.4 stalls per unit, which is a number that is used in a number of similar developments in BC, as well as other developments in Nelson. Anderson Gardens is at 0.32. Mountain Lakes and Nelson Landing are at 0.4. Nelson Cares, they have a range of different units out there, but it ranges from 0 stalls to 0.07 on the current site, up to 0.45. In Greater Victoria, they range anywhere from 0.16 to 0.50 stalls per unit. So this one, at 0.4, kind of is well within that range. Majority of Nelson Cares tenants do not own vehicles. They anticipate that fewer than a third will own and operate vehicles, and that scooter, bike parking, and public transit is the more preferred transportation method for their residents. So in this development, they're proposing 24 long-term bike stalls, 28 short-term, and 10 scooter stalls. As far as the transportation study, they are estimating that this development will produce about 10 vehicles per hour, so again, minimal impact to the adjacent intersections and roads. It was interesting, the transportation study identified 2 transportation demand management options, which I have chatted with the applicant about. One is a transportation information package, which basically outlines amenities and transit and walking routes in the area, which I thought was a great idea, as well as Kootenai Car Share. So that's something that I will be exploring with the applicant as we get to the development permit stage. So the proposed development definitely aligns with both the affordable housing strategy and the OCP. It leverages underutilized land and buildings towards increasing the supply of affordable housing. It provides diversity in housing options, affordable housing in good locations near bus routes and other amenities. We also have an OCP policy that says consider allowing an increase in density when affordable housing units are provided. So this is well in line with that. In terms of communication, the applicant held an open house on September 27th. In advance of that, they provided a notification to everyone within 60 meters, so they sent out a letter as well as a brochure. They invited people to attend the open house as well. They invited them to a private meeting to talk through concerns. They did a lot, which was great. And they also went on a neighborhood walk and chatted with everyone and talked to them about their concerns. So they got 12 comment sheets back from that open house, 10 in support and 2 in opposition. So that's kind of the summary of what's going on here. I've just kind of put that zoning analysis up. Again, in red are the 3 changes to the MU5 zone. So that's my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Murrow. Questions, council? Discussion on this project. This is another one that's been a long time coming. We've been waiting. I'll read the recommendation. The application to amend the zoning bylaw for the properties legally described as lots 5-8, block 57, district lot 58A, Kootenai District Plan NEP 266B, and part of lot A, Plan NEP 67124, PID 009-931-821/856/881/970 and 024-817-104 from the zoning designation of MU5 low-density residential to the zoning designation of CD7 be recommended to council as follows. A, that zoning amendment additional residential development bylaw 3397-2018 be given first and second reading. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Sherbo, seconded by Councillor Adams. Do I have any discussion or debate on this? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? The motion carries. Secondly, that council direct staff to schedule a public hearing. Mover, please. Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Nelson Cares. You're on your way. Close to it. We're going to go to public hearing. It's amazing tonight that we passed that those 2 developments are $20 million, the 2 combined. That's amazing, and it's great. Congratulations, folks. All right.
Shoot. I thought we were done. All right. I think Frances might be there. She found it.
Yeah, just hang on one sec, folks.
Tonight is a night of zoning. We have our next agenda item is an application for a zoning amendment at 711 10th Street. And this is to ask council to adjust from an institutional zone to a comprehensive development zone for multi-residential. And it's the people are looking to increase the number of dwellings on the property from 2 to 5 units. There is a motion here. And the recommendation is the application to amend zoning bylaw for the properties legally described as Lot 2 District Lot 97, Kootenai District Plan 7365, PID 009-054-448 from the zoning designation of I-1 institutional to the zoning designation of CD8 be recommended to council as follows. That zoning amendment bylaw number 3398, 2018 be given first and second reading. Thank you, Councillor Daly. Second. Councillor Adams. And we'll move now to our staff report.
Okay,
Thanks,
perfect.
Natalie.
You're welcome. So I think you already gave a bit of an introduction that they are applying to rezone this property from institutional zone to a comprehensive development zone for multi-unit building. They already have 2 existing dwellings on the property, and they'd like to increase that to 5. So the property is located in the Fairview neighborhood across the street from the Selkirk 10th Street campus. Some history on the property is that the building has been used for a variety of different businesses and organizations over the years, which has included a student union building, a pub, an international school, and a church. Some of the adjacent properties include 2 R2 medium density residential. The rest are R1 low density residential. It should be noted that under the current zoning, dormitory would be a permitted use. The applicants, however, did not want to be exclusively limited to student housing. So the proposal includes retaining the existing 2 one-bedroom units in the basement and renovating the main floor to accommodate 3 more additional one-bedroom dwellings, and all of the units will be for rental housing. So this rezoning application aligns with a number of policies and objectives outlined in the official community plan. And just to name a few, it achieves geographical distribution of a mix of housing types. It integrates new multi-unit housing within an established neighborhood. It encourages residential infill. It provides a diversity of housing options that are appealing, attainable, and affordable. It considers low-rise apartments, and it encourages development of new rental housing, as well as meets affordable housing strategy number 3 to increase density through multi-unit dwelling conversion. The proposed new CD8 zone is based on the existing R2 zone with the following changes. So it's a decrease in height from 12 meters to 10 meters. 2 out of the 3 neighbors in the R1 are in the R1 zone, and so 10 meters is more in line with most of their neighbors. It's a decrease in the minimum lot size slightly, and a decrease in the minimum lot width to 22 meters. The building is already existing, and so the building is 1.4 meters from the north side and 2.5 meters from the south side. As well, short-term rental will not be included as a use because this is planned for long-term housing. They're also proposing to increase the density from 4.5 dwelling units to 5 dwelling units. The rationale for allowing a half unit more than in the R2 zone is that this is an existing building that they're converting into 3 units rather than 2 larger units, and they can meet all the parking and amenity requirements outlined in the bylaw. So in summary, the neighborhood is predominantly residential, and the proposed rezoning is more consistent with the character of the neighborhood than the current institutional zone, and is supported by several policies and objectives outlined in the OCP, and will provide 3 additional rental housing units in the city. Staff is recommending approval.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Discussion, Council.
It's good to me.
Councillor Purcell.
Well, I'm curious about some of the objections from Sherry Young, and in particular, number 2, around what might happen if this property was sold. What might,
That's absolutely true. We're not proposing tying this particular development to exactly what's on the site. And so somebody could come after it's rezoned and tear it down and build something new. And so the parameters for the new CD zone are supposed to kind of set the limitations on that, which is a limit in height, which I think will reflect a little bit more what the neighborhood's allowed to do. Everybody else is allowed to have 10 meters. And they would still need to meet all the other requirements, like the parking and landscaping. I think that you could tie the current building to the land use. The only concern I see with this is I don't know the lifespan of this building. And in 15, 20 years, do we want to rebuild this building the way that it looks now? I'm not sure.
Or come back and reapply for.
Or they could come back and reapply. Yeah, it's not typically done for sort of smaller developments like this. It's usually larger, more comprehensive developments typically. Yeah.
Thank you. Any, Councillor Sherwood?
Yeah, my question was on the same letter about the, like he proposes or she proposes that the garbage storage be moved to the front. Is that fit in with the development?
In the zoning bylaw, it actually says that it has to be in the rear yard. It cannot be in the front yard. It doesn't generally look that good in the front yard, and so that's why that rule is in place. And because of the 5 units, it's quite a large area. So that might take away one of their parking spaces as well. I don't know if they'd be able to fit it all on there.
Can it be accessed from the back?
There is kind of a lane in the back, so I don't know where their garbage pickup is. I don't know if they'll have to move it out to the front or not. But
Says something about moving it to the front.
I think, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Purcell.
They are very sad before and after photos of this lovely space that the community built for themselves and how it got kind of trashed. I don't know. Is there any way to be, to sweet talk the developer into not rummaging through there further, or?
I think that was the adjacent property, some of
Right.
those photos, and I think, I wasn't here when that whole development happened, but from what I understand, part of the right-of-way was kind of dug up, and one of the neighbors was using it as their property and had nicely landscaped it.
It's a
Kind of
right-of-way.
tricky when you use city property as your own property, that.
It says a bunch of, like the neighbors communally kind of made it pretty, but.
They went on, it was always a city lane, and you can't expect that,
Yeah.
if you moved onto your neighbor's property because they didn't live there and built a garden and expected them to let you continue to use that. You could try to purchase the property, or it's not your thing.
No, it's trivial if it's just sitting there. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, and
Unnecessarily trashing things.
when it's not necessary, but in that case, development is allowed, and then those developments use city right-of-ways.
Right.
This is 709, right?
Yeah, that's a totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is 709.
This, the one they're
Yeah,
referring to. is
so it's not
totally different.
even
it's not
finished. I mean, that's not habitable.
Right.
There's no, no, I can't.
Next one.
go there.
Go ahead.
And about the lights, is there anything we can say about the lights being bright?
In the development permit process, we do review the lighting, and the lighting is not supposed to spill out beyond your property boundary. I'm not sure on the exact particulars of that. That is in our bylaw, and that is in the OCP, that the light, you're not supposed to create any light pollution, it's supposed to stay fully on your property, and so that's something I will ensure with this new development. And I'm pretty sure it was looked at in the other development, but it still would have been a change in that case. Yeah. because-
Okay.
Yeah.
Curious. Thank you.
Good?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, council, or conversation, or? Yes, Councillor Daly.
Well, it was interesting what was raised about, rezoning and then possibly someone, tearing down, developing it and making it something different. I don't think that's the case here. Everything's going to be built within the structure as proposed. And it's going to go to public hearing yet. But it'd be interesting to hear what those options are to put a requirement on something, that it be what it does, so we don't get things turned around. I don't know.
I think you have to be, as Natalie said, I think you have to be careful where you're going. I think council needs to look at this as saying, if this building, it could burn down tomorrow, right? And you're not going to rebuild it at what it was. So I think you need to think of this in consideration. Yeah, that's likely what's going to happen for this period of time. But it could burn down. Something could happen, and if you need to be comfortable that that size of a footprint, and as Natalie said, we've tried to restrict that more than it is now, so that it allows to fit more within the neighborhood. Because if it burnt down today, they could build to
What's there?
Higher, higher height.
Yeah, and totally within the existing zoning, so.
I don't know if I missed it, but what was the lot coverage for the building that's here now? Do we?
It's approximately 41%. I'm proposing they have 45%, which is what's allowed in the R2 zones, just if they wanted to add something in the future, but.
Anything further, council? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And secondly, that council directs staff to schedule a public hearing. Councillor Sherbo, seconded by Councillor Daly. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving along. We're not doing this one tonight, the fees and charges. We'll move on to item E. Agenda Elections Amendment Bylaw.
No.
No?
That's where we are.
Oh, okay. You said no. What? No, we're not doing
I'm
that.
teasing.
So we are preparing for an election in October of this year, and this bylaw will allow the preparations for that to proceed. The first recommendation is that the Elections Procedure Amendment Bylaw number 3396/2018 be read a first and a second time by title only. Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Second by Councillor Daly. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And second, that the Elections Procedure Amendment Bylaw 3396/20. Thank you. Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Adams. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on. Commuter Parking Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw. So we had a meeting on January 8th to talk about new parking meter rates for all-day parking. And this is to accommodate those people who drive into town to work every day and need a place to park. And we had a discussion about that. This motion brings that back. This is our adoption of that work. And the motion is that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Fees and Charges Amendment Commuter Parking Meter Rate Bylaw number 3390/2018 be finally adopted. Mover, Councillor Sherbo, seconder. Councillor Warmington, do you have, go ahead, Councillor.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this for people who live out of town only?
No.
No, I was erroneous in saying that. No, it's for all-day parking.
First come, first served.
It says, we say commuter, but you could be in-town commuter or out-of-town commuter. Yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Morrison.
Yeah, just a question. A few people raised that issue to me. I should just stay home more often, but raised the issue around the fact that this probably should be higher than $5. And I explained to them that it's $5 to park in the parkade. So this is the equivalent of parking your car all day if you use the parkade that you can park all day now and park there on Cedar Street. I'm just wondering.
Excuse me, Councillor, I almost did a spit take there because when you said people wanted to pay more for parking,
wanted us to charge more. Sorry.
Want others to pay more.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I'd be stopping
but
too.
that was it's the first time I've
I
heard
was just
people
wondering
say-
if I could ask the corporate officer if. I realize that this is a test case to have this parking along just that one strip for the 20 or 21 spots. Do we have to come? Do you have to come back here if we want to increase the price again?
Yeah,
It would
yes,
have
we
to-
do, because it is an amendment to a bylaw, so that bylaw is in effect until such time as council changes it, amends
Okay.
it, so, yeah.
And we're looking at reviewing this, I understand, in 1 year, so I can assure these people that stop me that it will be under review and it might go up.
Yeah, my understanding is that with the parking strategy, this is all to shape that parking strategy and what changes may be affected from that, and this is part of that process.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I sort of think that, and I understood their argument, and that is that when you just make it so relatively inexpensive for all those who actually don't want to see more vehicles coming into town, because I would have to say I think a lot of out-of-town people will be parking there, that's encouraging more traffic if we're actually trying to reduce traffic, but we don't want to price parking completely out of something that's realistic, but.
Well, I think right now we're going from charging nothing.
Nothing there, yes, exactly.
To charging, and this is, we're trying to find that price point that will encourage people to, use these 8-hour areas versus, that pressure we're seeing, especially on our residential neighborhood or downtown bordering neighborhoods. We're really trying to because those you have to, move your vehicle every 2 hours. We're thinking if, at a reasonable price, you don't have to move your vehicle, will people start to pick this up as a better alternative than parking in front of someone's house?
Yeah, and that's what I explained to the people that brought up the issue of making it higher, but I also assured them that would be reviewed, as is the whole parking strategy. But so I just wanted to just check in on how that we would come back again to change the price. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. All righty, ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next up, we have the local government election officers. This is to allow people to work for the election and to be in charge of it. And the motion is that Sarah Winton be appointed as the Chief Election Officer and Francis Long be appointed as the Deputy Chief Election Officer for the general local election to be held on October 20th, 2018.
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Seconder, Councillor Sherrill. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we're moving on to a council indemnity review. So normally we have a policy and that outlines what a councillor, what someone on council receives in the way of indemnity and payment for doing the work of council. Usually that's reviewed before council goes out of office, and there's a motion to allow that review to happen. So the recommendation is that a council indemnity review committee be struck, and that council staff, that staff recruit volunteers as per the council indemnity review policy for council's approval. Do you have a mover? Nope.
Can I have a question?
Yeah.
So if we go through the same system or the same process that we've been through before with having this committee or whatnot, is there a way for council to give input at the outset for things to consider or think about, like, I don't know, childcare costs or cell phone, or I don't know, like things to consider?
They have interviewed the councillors as part of this process in the past. Yeah.
Okay. Is it inherently part of it, or do they choose to do that? Oh.
No, they will speak to. If you want to go this way, they will speak to you.
And if you have a different approach,
the alternative is, I think we've included in here, is do a similar policy that you have for your exempt staff, where we go out and compare, select the median from communities that have similar size budget and et cetera to this council. So you can either sort of have this takes a fair amount of time to do this process, or you could look at a more simpler version and adopt a similar policy to your exempt policy for compensation.
so think about that for a minute. We have a recommendation, but we don't have a motion on the floor. So think about this for a second. Go ahead, Councillor
I was
Sherbo.
going to move an amendment. Do I have to wait till the motion's on the floor?
No, there's no motion.
There's
on
no
the
motion
floor
on the
right
floor.
now.
I'd
No
like-
movement and second.
I'd like the second one to read that staff recruit knowledgeable volunteers as opposed to non-knowledgeable.
Yeah.
How do we judge that?
Well, you need like,
The
policy.
The policy
Policy's
states
quite
the
clear.
requirements, and the people do come back for council's approval that are set for the committee, so.
So, Councillor, are you moving the recommendation that's in here? Are you moving it?
not yet.
You're not now. Okay, Councillor Adams.
I'll move the motion.
I'd say-
Councillor Adams moving. Is anyone seconding? No one's seconding yet.
Which one is?
Councillor Adams is moving the original recommendation.
Original recommendation. I have a question though.
Well, hang on, it hasn't
I
been
guess I don't,
seconded.
Because if there's no motion on the floor,
No, there's no motion. Okay, so there's no motion on the floor. So council, where we're at now is, are we going to review the indemnity or not? And if so, if you would like a different process, then propose something new. Councillor Sherwood.
Well, I was going to propose that staff recruit, how to put this, city staff to act as the council indemnity policy. Where is it?
Number 2 you want.
Amend the council indemnity review policy to use comparative municipal method of review.
I like that.
Well, we can certainly provide objective information from other similar size. And when we look at similar size, we look at budget complexity, that sort of thing. So we can certainly bring that forward. That would be different than, that's an objective exercise in comparing to similar councils with similar responsibilities. We can certainly do that piece of it. The committee tends to look in some different things than just an objective perspective. I know in the past they've looked at what they felt the community could support and things like that. In our case, we would look at something objective.
I have Councillor Morrison, and then I've got Councillor Adams.
Nobody seconded that.
I'll second his motion.
All right. Okay. So what? I'll read what's written here so you're clear. So there's what is being proposed is that that council amend the council and indemnity review policy to use a comparative municipality method of review. That's what's being proposed.
Actually, I would like to move first number 1 and number 2 there.
So you want both of them done?
Yeah.
Now, just for clarification on process, so the first thing says strike a council indemnity review committee, which is what we've said there. But that's the current policy. But wouldn't that committee, as part of its work, wouldn't they do number 2 as well, or you just?
We would provide them with that information. That would be likely part of their review. It may not be the end of their review.
Okay.
We don't need a committee to just look at the comparative municipalities and say what those are. If you want them to look at that as part of their process, we certainly would provide that.
All right. Councillor Morrison, before I get a seconder on this, I'm just gonna go through. If you bear with me, Council, go ahead.
No, that my question was that, and that is or has it been in the past that when the Council Indemnity Review Committee meets, that they have been given the information of the comparables within a municipality? Has that been always part of the process? Have they had that information to look at?
I think the last time it was done, they may not have all the information that they could have been provided. And, we had someone new sort of running that process, and I think it got a little
That's exciting. So I just want to say this out loud, because this is always a really this council indemnity is always a devil you do or you devil you don't discussion, and I'm just going to throw it out there that this is something that this council has, either when we've been having a cup of coffee or amongst ourselves and not having a council meeting anywhere, but talked about the fact that in comparison to other communities, and given the workload of the city of Nelson, although it's a small city of a population of 10,000, is that our remuneration is not, I'll just say it, it's not comparable to some same size communities that don't have fully paid fire, fully paid police, a hydro plant. And so everybody kind of ducks when they start talking about getting paid, because we realize we get paid from the public purse. So our pay is part of the taxation that everybody pays. And I think that we just need to get that concept out on the table. And the feeling was, I think, from a number of people that got elected this year, and then when you finally get to go and chat with other people at other venues like UBCM and the Association of Kootenay Boundary Municipalities, and you think like, wow, or even in comparison to our friends who live in the regional district, our compensation is low, and whether or not the Indemnity Review Committee is the proper venue to make sure that the pay is appropriate. And my understanding was that they had some information last year given to them that perhaps it should be higher, and they made the decision to do what they recommended. And it's very hard, once you have that recommendation, just as much as it's hard to have this conversation here tonight, is to say, it's for that council when they come in and those people have done their work and they are knowledgeable, Robin. I just want to say that although you've been here for 12 years, I've been twice in the time that I've been off council invited to be somebody to review indemnification. So it's not like it isn't people that aren't familiar. Usually it's a past counselor. It's usually somebody that's oftentimes an accountant. I mean, they're people that have some ability to know what goes on. So I would say that people are knowledgeable, and they do it in good faith. I mean, being on that committee. So,
Can I just clarify what happened last time? Because the committee came back with a recommendation. Staff reviewed it and suggested a higher amount, and then it was voted to go back to the committee, and they came back with a little bit increase on their original. But as you say, it was still low compared to other municipalities.
And it could have been at that time that you just said, no, we want to go with something else. I mean, so the council always has that, but it's very hard. All I'm just saying is this topic, this is like, you know, it's just one of those topics where it's hard to talk about because we're talking about like our self-worth or what we think we should be worth. So it's not an easy discussion because that could have been completely thrown out and said, no, we're going to go with, we know that there's another sort of offer on the table and we're going to go with that one, but thank you to the committee. So I think it just has to, I just want to clear the air because this is always one of those nasty. I remember the first time that when I got elected and didn't have a clue, and I was like, I don't want to decide about how much I get paid. Like, it was not an easy thing to do. So I like the idea that I like the Indemnity Review Committee, but I would like them to make sure that they have that comparative and to know that the council of the day, when they get that information, can say, no, it's not acceptable. Not send it back, just say, no, it's not acceptable. There's another option here, and we want that other option.
All right. Thank you for your.
But unlike just the,
Hold it. No,
just to clarify, we're voting for the next council, not for us.
yes, that's correct. I think.
But some people might be on the next council. It's always very difficult. If you know you're leaving, that's fine. Sometimes it's not so difficult to have that discussion when you're saying, I want more pay, and oh, look at that, it is more pay, and now I'm definitely gonna run again. I mean, you're not supposed to be running for the pay. That's all. It's a difficult conversation to have.
All right, I'm gonna take people in order. I'll go with Councillor Adams first.
Okay, this review committee will make a recommendation and this council will approve it, right?
Or not.
Or not, well, okay, but, so the next council do not get to vote on what they're being paid, right?
That's right. Well, they could. Well, just a minute, hold it. If the next council decided that they wanted to reopen that discussion, they possibly could, but I've never seen it happen.
Okay, and my other.
Except the regional
question,
district.
when this committee is appointed, they will have their recommendation to this council, and we'll talk about it and approve it long before the October 20th election, right?
No, if we discuss it any longer tonight, time's running out. So I think.
Oh, come on, there's months.
I know. Yes, that's correct. That's correct, Councillor. Yeah. All right, Councillor Daly.
So have we got something on the floor?
No, we don't.
No.
Can I make a motion to put something on the floor?
Yes, you could.
So I would like to make the motion that, the recommendation that we strike a council indemnity review committee and that they use the same review policy that includes the terms of reference, that does look at other municipalities, and that they make a recommendation to this council. And at that time, we'll have a look at those terms of reference that they had and those references to other what other municipalities are paying their councillors, and as adults, we'll make a decision and accept that recommendation or amend it and pay more. I don't mind.
So let's just get the
Okay,
motion
so
on the
put
table.
that one on the floor.
So what I believe Councillor Daly has asked is that we put in the first and that the entire motion, because we have to recruit volunteers. But I also think that what you
Strike a council review.
also said is that that we use a comparative municipality method of review as well.
It's part of their terms of reference, as
Yeah.
part of that policy. So.
All right, so do I have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Morrison. Now, do you have anything else to say?
Oh, just that we just have to be adults when it comes back with the recommendation. If you think that it's not appropriate, then we can make an amendment.
Thank you.
We'll do it then. I see it's September 15th, which is a bit problematic because you're in the middle of an election, and whatever happens, it might be a little, if it could be moved a little closer.
I'll try to.
Yeah, we will do that. The policy hasn't been amended from when it was a November election.
Exactly. I was going to
so-
ask that if the.
So they would just advance one, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe we can have it in July or something, be nice.
Counselor Sherbo, do you have you next? Anything
not-
further?
I'm not sure exactly what the motion is, to be.
We are going to, the motion is that we, the council strike the committee, that volunteers be recruited, and that we use a comparative model with similar size, communities of similar size and service levels. Is that correct?
If everybody looks at the terms of reference for the committee, it does include that. You know,
Yeah.
those are the factors that they will consider in doing this review. And certainly, comparative rates for other municipalities and like bodies where pertinent. So that is definitely in their terms of reference. It's not their only factor. Yeah, as you can see, there's 5 or 6 factors there.
It'd be good to get this right so that we don't send a committee out to do a bunch of work and then they come back and we say, well, no, that's not what we asked for. So I think it's as specific as we can be. That's good. So I think we're looking at community of similar size, but also of similar service level. Go ahead, Councillor Purcell.
Which is hard to find as we.
Yeah, we're a fish of a different color. Yeah.
What we're looking at, as you know, in your excluded staff, we look at your capital budget, your operating budget, the services we provide. The size of the community is only one piece of it.
Right.
Because Nelson does provide quite a bit more service for our size than most municipalities our size. So I think in our comparator group, I don't know if there was any municipalities exactly our size. They tended to be a bit larger.
Or have as many unions and yeah, it's
Exactly.
amazing. It's amazing.
So then I guess my other question was around the due date. It seems like it should be pushed up because of the election. And
Do
then
you have a suggestion?
Yeah.
July?
Well, I don't know. Sure.
All right.
And then I'm just wondering what is common practice in other small and medium-sized municipalities? Do they do this kind of thing?
Yes.
They strike a committee to figure it out?
Well,
Yeah,
not necessarily.
It's usually the outgoing council reviews the indemnity, and that seems to be common practice in most local governments.
That
And
makes sense, but I wonder about the committee.
process?
Yeah.
that I don't know.
We're making a recommendation. We can.
Well, I'm just curious, like what in the context of what other people do.
I think they tend, we get surveys all the time from other municipalities of what compensation that their mayor and council receives and what allowances, those type of things. I think they tend to do that type of objective review.
Okay.
Good. Go ahead, Councillor Warmington.
Well, just given what our CAO has told us about the comparator analysis that's done, I'm wondering what the value added of having a committee on top of that is.
So you're thinking that don't recruit volunteers to do this work when we might have the information just by doing a comparison
Yeah,
and have
I'm
a
just-
recommendation from staff.
I'm just wondering if people have an idea of what additional information the committee is going to bring or what additional analysis they can offer if we're doing such a
Yeah, in the
robust
past
comparator analysis.
Yeah, they've. I remember one year that's where the clothing allowance sort of came from. That one time, and I think that got eliminated.
That got eliminated. That one was very controversial.
But that was
Yeah,
you had
that
a
was-
local. Well, you had a local group looking at or local committee that said, we think our council should, they do have to.
Dress better.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The last group was so poorly dressed.
Give those poor schlubs some money.
It tends to be one of those kind of, and I think the maybe
We'll be
the
getting
tech
gym
allowance
classes
came from
Okay.
that group in the past. So some of these.
Oh, Lord.
And does it just feel like it is some sort of community approval? Is that part of the benefit of it? I don't know.
For sure.
Yeah.
And but you have 3 people that.
And with the staff, okay, the staff is involved.
As a resource.
Maybe, yeah. Go ahead, Councillor Sherbo.
How many volunteers do you get? How
I
many
think that generally use 3.
The policy states 3.
I would suggest 5.
It says
The more you have, then the
Three
more
is enough.
complex it gets.
Council, are you somewhat comfortable with this process now? And you know, if you have any, I'm sorry to make light of this. This is a serious item to consider. What I've heard from council is that you would like, it's fine to have community or volunteers, 3 volunteers. We'll have a staff as resource. You want to have comparisons with other communities. Also realizing that a community of our size, other communities of our size don't have the scope of service, so that was something else that you wanted to be made clear to the committee, and that those factors be taken into consideration in terms of when people are assessing the workload. And once they do that, geez, I hope we get some candidates running for the next election and people see how much work it is. It is a lot of work, but it's important work and it's good work. Did I cover most of the important points that people made?
So the resolution on the table is the one in the staff recommendation.
Yeah. And so are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Council. Wow, it's amazing to me. Now, are we going to get hung up on the flower power sculpture purchase? We have a recommendation here from the Cultural Development Committee. They want to purchase a piece of sculpture, and the recommendation is that Council approves the purchase of the flower power sculpture in the amount of $12,500 to be paid over a 2-year period of time. Funding will come from the Downtown Waterfront Reserve. Do I have a mover? Councillor Warmington. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Purcell. Do I have discussion on this one?
Have we picked one, or this is just something coming in?
No, there's a photograph if you go down
You
farther.
have to scroll down farther, Bob.
Yeah.
Just as a, I guess, a little bit of background.
Flowers.
Oh, that one.
It's the one down by Railtown right now.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just as a little bit of background, you know,
Arrows.
where they've been able to, I guess, purchase some permanent pieces over the last few years. They have taken advantage of that, and generally, as you pay part of that lease, then you get you get that discount of what you've already paid towards it, and that makes it somewhat affordable. In this particular case, you know, we did a fair amount of work to make that sculpture fit where it is, and we would get, I guess, the permanent benefit of that work staying. It would come from this Downtown Reserve account, which we use to fund the ongoing program, and as council knows, there's definitely a number of downtown waterfront projects that are starting to tap into to this fund, but that's really what it was there for, to create enhancements in our downtown and waterfront.
Go ahead, Councillor Warmington.
Well, I just wanted to mention that this is one sculpture that I've heard a lot of really positive feedback about. When it first went in, people thought it looked really cheery and happy. You know, it's early spring too, so it's quite a nice splash of color. So I have heard quite a lot of positive. I've had a lot of positive feedback about this particular sculpture.
Great, thank you. Any further comments or discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. On with flower power sculpture. Good. We have some reports here. Our next item, and we have reports from the Finance Department and the Building Department. Does anybody have any questions about either of those reports?
Just like,
Not, move receipt, please. Thank you, Councillor Sherbo. Seconder, Councillor Adams. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Council action items. We have our action item list. Does anyone have any of these items they'd like to pull for discussion? No. Hearing none. Motion to receive. Councillor Morrison. Seconder. Councillor Purcell. All in favor? Opposed? We're almost at the end here, Council. Hang in there with me. Come on. We have minutes from committees of council. We have minutes from the Nelson NAEDP, the Cultural Development Committee, the Nelson Housing Committee, and the Advisory Planning Committee. Thank you. Move receipt. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Seconder, Councillor Sherbo. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. there are no late items. We now have council reports. Does anybody have anything they would like to report? Councillor Sherbill.
Yes, I had a few meetings. The Streetcars Society is getting ready for their AGM. And then I attended the library meeting, and unfortunately, we have a person that wants to join the library board, but you can't have an even number of board members. It has to be an odd number. So this is a bit of a quandary, because this person wants to join the library board, and you don't want to lose them.
Yep.
But they're trying to recruit a 7th board member, so it's in the bylaws, so.
Good.
We have to have an odd number of people on the board. So that's
Okay.
going ahead, and then I attended the Nelson Pilots Association meeting. And they're going to put meters on each hangar so that each individual member will pay the amount of their electricity use. Whereas before they kind of grouped it all together and divided it evenly, and some people weren't using their hangar electricity. So they're going to do that. And as I said, I think in another meeting, there's a shortage of hangar space. And so one of the pilots is getting a hangar in Caslow, which has got lots of room. So that is a bit of a concern to lose pilots to Caslow and not being able to keep them here at our airport. Plus the usual runway maintenance and all, and at taxiway maintenances. They're still looking into, I think they applied for a grant again to get those fixed up. And plus all our budget meetings.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Councillor. Go ahead, Councillor Purcell.
Well, I wanted to remind everybody of the poverty reduction workshop happening at Central School on February 9th. It's a hot lunch in the Central School gym from 12:30 to 3:30. The province is here wanting to know what a good poverty reduction strategy would look like. And I know there's it's a issue that's near and dear to many of our community members' hearts, and they're really hoping that a lot of people with lived experience will turn up and come to that meeting. Councillor Warmington and I went to a School District 8 meeting, a board meeting, where they talked about this upcoming workshop. That the province is having them in 20 different communities, and we're one of them, so we're fortunate. And it was the School District 8 meeting was remarkable in many ways. One of them was that children from Wildflower and LVR were there, and they were shockingly articulate and perceptive about this issue. So I think it'll be a really robust community conversation. Also, I went to the open house for laneway housing. The weather was horrible, but I went, and some other community members went too, and it was really interesting to see where people are putting their little red dots. Everybody got their 6 red dots, and you could put them next to ideas. You could put them next to photographs. You could put them. There was a board where you could put, Post-its with your concerns or things you're excited about, and people put their dots next to those. And I think planning probably got a lot of good information from the community that way. There are some clear trends around what people were looking for, including I think people were really interested in being able to have a laneway house and a suite. Right now they can't, and that was something that had a lot of red dots next to it. And then otherwise, Councillor Warmington, are we allowed to talk about Nelson at its best?
I believe so. I
Sorry.
don't think.
Do you want to talk about it?
I can go ahead.
Okay. Well, Nelson at its best are the poverty reduction arm of SPAN, is the lucky recipient of $150,000 from the Columbia Basin Trust, which is really exciting to further some of the work that it's already done in its poverty reduction initiatives. Councillor Warmington wrote the application, and so we're excited that she is successful. So that's a good chunk of change coming into the community to really look at some creative methods of alleviating poverty. I know. I don't know if I should speak any more specifically about it because some of the details haven't been ironed out yet, but it's exciting.
Thank you.
I forgot one thing. Just, sorry, I can't read my own writing. The Isuzu Society had celebrated the Japanese New Year, which is the same as our calendar. And theirs is also the Year of the Dog this year, as well as the Chinese Year of the Dog.
Thank you. Councillor Daly.
It's a busy month with budget meetings.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. For us, it's probably the busiest time of year for as much about time commitments, and you're coming full days. But I also attended the Laneway Housing public engagement, and I guess we're going to hear from what the results were for that. It was pretty well attended given the crappy weather.
Yeah.
Street Culture Collaborative Working Group, and it's a collaborative, so. But unfortunately, the business sector wasn't quite well represented. They had some really good early engagement, but they kind of lose interest after a while, unfortunately. I did hear the their 1 year report from the facilitator, Linda DeChef, and we're going to get that. I think they're on the agenda February 19th. So we're going to hear about the kind of the difference that the street outreach workers have made, and there's really some interesting numbers we're going to see. And I think it's something that we need to celebrate, that our community's doing it, addressing this differently. And it's interesting that at the same time I see on our action item list, panhandling bylaws coming up in...
Street bylaw.
Sorry?
A street bylaw.
Street?
Street, not
Streets,
panhandling.
not pan-
Oh, we're going to call it
panhandling,
something.
Pacific.
What did you say it was called?
The streets. How we use our streets.
Oh, okay, so we're going to have a discussion, or
That's
is there?
not specifically on panhandling. Certainly, that's part of it, but.
Right. So anyway, a couple of the next steps from the recommendations from that collaborative were temporary work program that they're looking at, and how do you engage people that are unemployed and hanging out on the street, as well as a drop-in center where people, right now, we're hearing that the library is getting more pressure, more use, the bathrooms, and people are going in there and sleeping, and they're probably they've been really tolerant or more than that, and at some point we need to find another way, another place where people can go that isn't the library, because that's not really what it's for. So a drop-in center and a temporary work place might be an answer to taking some pressure off the library. Went to the Chamber of Commerce, a business engagement around cannabis. Not really well attended. It was early in the morning, but there was some good ideas, and we got a pretty good idea of where we are. I think again we'll get a report on that once the whole process is done. And I also attended a 5-year strategic planning with the Capital Board this Sunday, and a really enthusiastic group of people. Obviously. Culture, theater is very important to them, but it's a good mix on the board of people from business and different sectors that have some good ideas, and it went really well. I think they're on track and doing a good job with our theater, and that's it.
Thank you. Who's next? Who would like to go next? Go ahead, Councillor Warmington.
Well, yes, lots of budget meetings both here at the city and also with the NDCC for Rec 5. Our next one is tomorrow evening. And all my usual sort of meetings that I go to, the violence against women, and lots of poverty stuff lately that seems to be a real theme. There was also a regional conference call from sort of a group that is dealing with poverty through CBT at
Columbia Basin Health Collective.
Thank you. Yes, that's going to be the name now. It's Revelstoke and Trail, Cranbrook, sort of, and Nelson. But yeah, interesting work going on there with the help of the RDI to gather statistics and really understand what's going on in terms of income inequality and poverty in the basin. So that was very interesting. One really interesting thing is the Nelson Area Economic Development Partnership is working on an initiative, is it called the Community Investment Initiative, which is looking for local investors to invest in startups and local business expansion. And they're having a meeting to explore that a little bit further tomorrow night as well at the Chamber. And I think it's a fabulous idea. So it's money within the community being reinvested back into community to grow new initiatives and new businesses.
Is that an open meeting? Like, can anybody go?
It's completely,
By invitation?
well,
Or
it's full right now.
It's full.
Oh.
There was a similar one in Calscar earlier in the day. But yeah, that one, I guess, filled up pretty quickly.
Which is great, because it's, I think, a really exciting initiative. And Creston, I think, has taken some similar steps and had a lot of success with raising money within the community for the community.
I heard that the East Kootenays were really
Yeah,
on that.
it's the person that's heading that got funding through, I think, the Rural Development Fund to really push that Creston model out further.
That's great.
Agricultural based.
Okay.
Pardon?
Agricultural based?
I think they initially had a theme, but I think in the end they decided that in our smaller community it's pretty hard to get too locked into one investment stream.
Okay. Good.
My turn?
Yeah.
Over to you, Councillor Adams.
Budget meeting. How many budget meetings do we have? Too many. No, we had lots. They were good. Other than that, I went to the regular Chamber of Commerce meeting, and I went to, we had a blanket exercise at Hume School for all the teachers.
Oh, nice.
And Crawford Bay for an Aboriginal Education Advisory Committee. That and budget meetings, and then this week we're here. Wednesday I have a Seniors 51 meeting. Thursday, hopefully you're all going to attend the Rotary fundraising dinner for Jimmy Reimer at 10th Street campus. Robin and I will be there.
Yep.
And I have one other thing saying we're here.
Excuse, is it for Jim Reimer's development?
Yes,
we
Jim
talked about
Reimer's
tonight?
develop. Oh, it is for his
Oh, it's an
development. right?
international dinner for Haiti Arise.
Oh, right, sorry.
What?
For the Haiti.
Haiti, that's right.
Not his
too.
development.
That's
I
Jim
read the ticket,
Ryder's
I just forgot.
project.
Yes, for Haiti.
Okay, now this is especially for you.
It is?
Sashing Our Warriors. The Sashing of Our Warriors campaign is a grassroots movement that calls attention to the impact of violence on our otherwise invisible Métis women and girls. Through the power of Métis ceremony, we will heal our community emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. By wearing your warrior sash, you commit to honoring, respecting, and protecting the Métis women and children in your life. So I would like you to wear this.
Well, thank you, Councillor Adams.
It's just got a little pin on it. I'll let you pin it, because
Oh, thanks.
damn right I'll stick you. in there.
Well,
That's-
I'm quite
Anyway,
honored.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Wow.
Good to go?
Yep, that's it. I'm
Thank
done.
you, Counselor. Counselor Morrison.
You know, when you go last, everybody's already covered everything. It's the best. It's the best part of it. So, lots of meetings, lots of those exciting budget meetings. I do wish some more of the local media would get out and listen to it. They have moments of high entertainment and very very little boredom, as far as I'm concerned. In terms of, we've set some schedules, so housing meetings are every second month. We didn't see a need to continue with monthly meetings, so that January, next one will be March, May. So every second month, they're on the second Tuesday of the month, if anybody wants to join in and listen. And we've selected the Planning Commission will continue to meet monthly, and they are looking at the third Wednesday will be their regular scheduled meetings. We've been to Recreation, Councillors Purcell and Mormington and myself, and more tomorrow. Chamber meeting with Councillor Adams. The first cannabis community meeting at the Chamber of Commerce with Councillor Daly and the Mayor. Upcoming, of course, tomorrow night, I'm sorry to hear that that Community Investment Cooperative meeting is fully subscribed. I thought that some more community people will be able to get involved. Unabashed promotion of an upcoming Capitol theater event. Now, it's not about me, if only I had some talent. But there's an improv, piano, and dance. It's got Adrian Wagner on piano, Slava Dorval, who's our cultural ambassador, will be dancing. But my shout out goes to Eldon Pulak, who is actually a physical therapist that I work with, and often when I'm away on city business, he's working at the hospital. So he's our dancing therapist. But anyways, I would encourage people to come out, particularly when our cultural ambassador will also be dancing this Saturday at the Capitol Theatre. I'm surprised that Councillor Daly didn't mention, because we only do these announcements at the regular meeting. Upcoming is the Coldest Night. Reminder for everybody, February the 24th. Ongoing fundraiser for Nelson Cares. They've gotten their one project done, but as we can see tonight, there is need for ongoing fundraising for all of our projects in the community. So funds raised there will still be going to a good home locally. And then you guys mentioned the poverty reduction meeting at Central School. And I think that's it for upcoming. So there's something for everybody, just even all the way up to the weekend.
Thanks, Councillor. As Councillor Morrison said, by the end of the round, everybody's covered everything, and I think that I would, first of all, like to thank all of council and staff for the budget meetings that we're having. I know that when you say budget meeting, most people find that word boring. They think it's just, we just talk about a bunch of numbers. The presentations that staff are giving to council in conjunction with the numbers and why we do things, how we do things, how we plan for the future, they're absolutely excellent. And thank you to staff for doing that work. I know staff stay up many late nights working on these presentations for us, and it's much appreciated. And I do really appreciate the work of council. There's really good questions that are asked and good ideas. It's our opportunity to really communicate with how the work of the city proceeds and how we see things moving into the future. So that's really important. Tonight, I can't say how impressed I was with tonight's meeting. Sometimes it seems like we just have another meeting, but tonight there were some momentous decisions made. Shaping what Railtown will look like far into the future was huge. Approving 2 affordable housing developments that over the cost of, that will total over $20 million in the community, will help to put a dent in finding solutions to the housing issues that we are facing. Those are huge things. The thing that I'm also impressed with was the poverty reduction meeting that's happening this Friday. Parliamentary Secretary Elmore will be present, and she's traveling the province and holding these events. These events are being held. So the provincial government is very interested in what communities need and what they're doing. So this is an important event, and I really appreciate the work that our council does on that. I'd also like to recognize Mr. Cormack. He doesn't shine his light out very often in terms of blowing his own horn. He was invited to present on behalf of our city at the LGLA, which is the Local Government Leadership Academy, and his presentation was on technology in the tech sector and what Nelson's doing. And he was extremely well received, and the provincial government really, the people there really like what Nelson is doing. We're hoping that that's going to have some dollars flowing our way too, so we can continue that work. But he was away this last week doing that on our behalf, so thank you for that. And Francis, thank you for getting some community meetings organized as well and doing what you're doing with the sport community. And I know you'll be busy getting ready for elections coming up and all of the other stuff, so that's important. I will be heading out of town. Mid-month, I'll be at UBCM. We are having Advocacy Days. Now, Advocacy Days was started by the UBCM executive a couple of years ago. It's an opportunity once a year for us to meet with ministers, provincial ministers, on issues that local governments are wanting to move forward, and we have an opportunity to talk about some of the resolutions that are passed at UBCM. So I'm looking forward to participating in that. And when I'm gone, I'm going to have a couple of counselors that are going to help me out with attending meetings on the hospital board, as well as the Central Resource Committee, and it never stops. So thank you, council, and thank you to our staff people. It was great, and especially the fire department tonight. That was very special that they came. Way to go, Councillor Morrison. Yes, Councillor.
Are you wearing your hat?
Council Morrison confused me. So when is the date of our next budget meeting?
27th.
I can't accept.
February 27th, 9 o'clock.
And then I scratched it out.
All right. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Councillor Daly, seconded by Councillor Adams. All in favor? We're done. Thank you. Well, we're sort of done. We're going to go back in camera. Good job, Janice.
Can't go home yet?
Can't go home yet.